Mary had a little lamb.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe it.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
According to news reports, President Trump interviewed you and asked you to be part of the legal team defending him in the Mueller investigation twice. First in the spring of 17, when the investigation was just beginning, and again earlier this year. Is that correct?
No. I had one conversation with him that related to his private representation, and I can describe that for you. That was in June of 2017. That's the only time I met him before I talked to him about the job of Attorney General, which obviously is not the same as representing him.
Have you discussed the Mueller investigation with the president or anyone else in the White House?
I discussed the Mueller investigation, but not in any particular substance. I can go through my conversations with you if you want.
Well, not at this time, but I may come back to you and ask you about that. I don't want to take any more time.
Yeah, no, don't take any more time, Diane. Do not probe deeply into why you're considering for Attorney General a man who volunteered to be on Trump's defense team when nobody else would. So this is the thing, okay? Get ready for your bar exam, everybody, because you're gonna hear stuff that it's gonna make your head spin over here. So I know that Trump doesn't want an attorney general. He wants a combination of concierge, bagman, hired assassin. I get it. He is not gonna get that with this guy. You know how I know? This guy is a lobbyist, and he's 68 years old, and his area of expertise is deregulation of media. That's what he does. I mean, he's he's part of the telecommunications deregulation group. Okay, he was Attorney General of the United States for all of 14 months back in 1991. For 14 months, and he took that position and parlayed it into a wonderful, unbelievable career on K Street as a lobbyist, as general counsel to Verizon after he lobbied for them because they wanted, it's all about mergers and acquisitions. It's all about deregulation of media. That's what he knows. That's who he is. That's what he does or did. Now he's sort of semi-retired, you see. He is 68 years old, and he's had this fabulous career in lobbying, which he's turned into being Verizon's general counsel, and now he's a consultant, which means he doesn't really work. And my experience with these kinds of lobbyists is kind of big. And I'm telling you, they only know the area that they know. It's like a doctor who specializes in I don't know, nail fungus or something. I mean, you go to them with cancer of the lung. They can't help you. That's exactly the same thing with this guy. This guy, I mean, Trump cannot find anybody to work for him, and this guy probably retired and decided he doesn't like being in retirement, and wrote this crazy off-the-hook letter and passed it around, now we're finding out, to everybody. He passed it out to anybody and everybody that he could think of. He sent it to Rod Rosenstein. He sent it to Steve Engel, who's the assistant attorney general. He sent it to the White House special counsel, Emmett Flood. He sent it to Noel Francisco, our solicitor general. He sent it to a former Justice Department colleague named Pat Cipollini, who is now the White House counsel because Trump can't find anybody to work for him. Don McGahn is gone. He needed to replace. And so we're scraping the bottom of the barrel. And what we're doing here is we're actually going through some crazy little dog and pony show where, they only need 51 votes. They have 53. He's going to get confirmed. So I wanted to sit and listen to whether or not this guy was dangerous, whether this guy is scary, whether this guy would suppress the Mueller report, whether this guy is really, what Trump is looking for, a toxic guy. Trump is not going to like this guy. I'm just telling you right now, he's not going to like him because this guy knows nothing about nothing. No, he doesn't. Dianne Feinstein asked him about, okay, let me just play you the rest of the subject matter, and then I'll go back to Dianne Feinstein, and I'll show you. She asked this guy about the emoluments clause, because this is part of, what we're going to find about Donald Trump is that that he's enriching himself as president, which violates the emoluments clause. Trust me, this guy knows nothing about the emoluments clause. This is a little scary, though, that you're going to have an AG, an Attorney General of the United States, who doesn't understand the Constitution. Which is what we're going to have. Because he's a lobbyist. He's a media deregulation lobbyist. A mergers and acquisitions. You know how I knew this? Okay, this is really crazy. I was listening to the testimony this morning, and I was measuring my kitchen because I think I might want to, replace the backsplash. And so I was trying to figure out, how do you do square footage of a backsplash? Like, do I include this? And anyway, I had the TV on because I have a little 13-incher in the kitchen. Hi, Howard. And, yeah. And, so, well, when they get older, they shrink. He used to be 6'3". He's now 6'2". I'm telling you. But anyway, I have a little 13-incher in the kitchen, and I had it on, and I'm listening to him, and they're asking him questions about Trump's position on the Time Warner merger. This he knew about. And it was like ding, 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 ding. So I went and I Googled him. Yes, he worked for Kirkland and Ellis. And yes, he was the lobbyist that did all the mergers with various telecommunications companies that eventually became Verizon. And then Verizon hired him as general counsel. And oh, by the way, he was only attorney general for about 14 months of his entire life. And he has made this into, his calling card to become a powerful K Street lobbyist. This is what I said. It's like Fat Denny Hastert. He was once Speaker of the House, also a child molester. And, he's in jail now. No, I think he's out. But, Denny Hastert was a lobbyist for Turkey, and then he got popped as being, an ex-wrestling coach who was molesting the boys. Do you know what I mean? And I just know these guys. I just know who they are and what they don't know. But anyway, so Dianne Feinstein said, well, didn't you, interview with Trump to be part of his defense team? Oh, only once. She said, didn't you talk to him twice? Oh, no, that's incorrect. I only talked to him once. So Lindsey Graham, idiot boy, asked him, go ahead and explain what happened that Dianne Feinstein was asking you about. She said that you met with Donald Trump and you were going to be on the defense team. And he actually volunteers this, that the Israeli ambassador that Trump picked knew him. And he called him up and he said to him, look, the president is scraping the bottom of the barrel. He doesn't have anybody there to represent him. Would you meet with the president? Would you talk to him? And he said, yeah, I'll talk to the president. He went and talked to the president, and he turned the president down because he's 68 years old and he didn't want to become a defense attorney because he's not a defense attorney. He's a lobbyist. And so he said, I didn't want to go and have one client, which means I'm not a litigator. He did everything. And then he said, I didn't want to put my head in the meat grinder, meaning he doesn't practice law. Okay, he's not a prosecutor. He's not a defense attorney. He's not a litigator of any sort. He's a lobbyist. He didn't want to put his head in the meat grinder. But he's going to put his head in the meat grinder now and become attorney general. Let me tell you why. All he's going to care about, see, this is what lobbyists do. Lobbyists think that they're Forrest Gump, and they think that the key to their success is being in the right place at the right time and putting people together in a room, and that if you could do that, then you could either get a client or you can make a client's wish come true. Now, the reason why most lobbyists are, Republican leaning is because most lobbyists lobby on the tax code. And so You can't afford to hire a lobbyist. I can't afford to hire a lobbyist. So we don't get any representation when it comes to the tax code, which is why we always get stiffed. And corporations can pay zero taxes on billions of dollars worth of profits. So that's why. And so lobbyists tend to lean Republican only because they know the big money is to lobby on the tax code. Their clients are going to be corporate, so they're for corporate tax cuts. Hence, they're Republicans. Other than that, they don't have any values. They don't have any guiding principles. They don't have any causes. Do you know what I'm saying? So this guy is a telecommunications deregulation guy, right? And that's all he knows. But he's like, sure, I'll talk to the president. Okay. So now check this out. So he's saying he didn't want to get into the meat grinder. He didn't want one client, meaning he's not a litigator. And he didn't want to put his head into the meat grinder. But now he wants to be attorney general. Why? Because he's 68 years old. He's partially retired. You know, he's like a consultant now, you know, for Verizon. And so he's thinking, listen, I got kids that are lawyers. I got grandkids. They kept referring to his grandkids that were sitting there taking notes. They're all lawyers. So, you know, I'll go and I'll be the AG and I'll get my kids, into, various attorney general's office. I'll get them into, SDNY. I'll get them into federal prosecutor's office. I'll get them in, it's a good thing for me to do as a grandpa. That's who this guy is.
Yeah, so in June of 2017, middle of June, Ambassador David Friedman, who's the U.S. ambassador to Israel, who I didn't know. I knew that he was a top-tier lawyer in New York and apparently a friend of the president's.
Okay, so the friend of the president's, who has been appointed as the ambassador to Israel, okay, Mr. Friedman, is just randomly calling people to see if anybody will represent the president. And he finally gets down to the bottom of the list and he says, oh, this guy was Attorney General of the United States about, 30 years ago for 14 months. Let's call him.
Reached out to me and we talked one evening, and he said that my understanding was he was interested in finding lawyers that could augment the defense team, and failing that, he wanted to identify Washington lawyers who had broad experience that whose perspective might be useful to the president's, and he asked me a number of questions like, what have you said about the president publicly? Do you have any conflicts and so forth? And I told him that I didn't think I could take this on, that I had just taken on a big corporate client that was very important to me and expected a lot of work. And I said at my point in life, I really didn't want to take on this burden, and that I actually preferred the freedom to not have any representation of an individual, but just say what I thought about anything without having to worry about that. And I said that my wife and I were sort of looking forward to a bit of respite, and I didn't want to stick my head into that meat grinder. He asked me if I would nonetheless just briefly go over the next day to meet with the president. And I said, sure, I'll go and meet with the president. And he brought me over and was squeezing me in. It looked to me like it was before the morning staff meeting because people were grouping by the door to get in, and I went in. And he was there, the ambassador was there, sat through the meeting.
It's pathetic. It's very, very pathetic. It's very, very, very sad. I will play you when we come back. Dianne Feinstein asked him about the emoluments clause. He doesn't know anything about the emoluments clause. She asked him if he had any confidential information on the Mueller investigation. His answer was, I don't recall. He was asked a lot of questions about a lot of different aspects of law. He did not know a million things. He's not an expert on this. He's not an expert on that. The fact that he's being considered for Attorney General should only tell you one thing, and that is we are at the bottom of the barrel. And that's not to impugn him and his lobbying career and all the money he made with his corporate clients and his mergers of, various telecommunications companies to create Verizon Wireless and be their general counsel in the end. That is what he's good at. Nothing else.
Thanks, Randy, at RandyRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, The Randi Rhodes Show.
The emollients clause of the Constitution.
Well, I think there's a dispute as to what the emoluments clause relates to. I have not personally researched the emoluments clause. I can't even tell you what it says at this point.
Great.
Off the top of my head, I would have said, well, emoluments are essentially a stipend attached to some office, but I don't know if that's correct or not. But I'm sure I think it's being litigated right now.
This is sad. This is very, very, very sad. It's sad to watch. It's sad to listen to. It's sad to understand as much as I do and to see that this is the choice. It's not really a choice. This is what's left because nobody wants to work for this president. Now, they did ask him, some questions about, this crazy letter that he wrote. And he said, well, if I were looking, because he wrote this memo in June, and he showed it to everybody in the administration. I mean, he wrote this 19-page letter where he said that the president of the United States can't be found guilty of obstructing justice for firing James Comey. Okay, that's what this 19-page letter was about. And he gave it to Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. He gave it to the Assistant Attorney General. He gave it to Emmett Flood, the president's lawyer. He gave it to like everybody in the Trump White House. And they asked him, did you do that because you wanted to get this job? And he goes, well, if I wanted to get this job, there are about 1 million other ways I could have done it. Well, I got news for you. There is no better way, and every lobbyist knows it, than to do what he did. There is no better way. That is why lobbyists write op-eds. That is why lobbyists write letters defending a president's position on this or that. And that's what he did. This is a standard tactic to get in front of legislators, to get attention for your issue, or to advertise yourself as somebody to talk to on the subject matter. So while he said, there were so many other ways if I wanted to, apply for the job of Attorney General, no, there was no better way than the way he did it, which is to be in semi-retirement. He is, quote, of counsel right now to Kirkland and Ellis. That is his job. And Kirkland and Ellis is a giant lobby shop, and he is of counsel to them. And he's semi-retired, obviously. And, his experience as AG goes way, way back to, and he recommended pardons for almost everybody involved in Iran-Contra. Okay, Caspar Weinberger, who was just about to go on trial. That's how they know him. Just from that era, from that moment in time, okay? And he has made a fortune working on K Street as a mergers and acquisitions telecommunications lobbyist. That's who he is. It's what he does. And they were dialing around town looking for some. I'm surprised our phone didn't ring, except that they probably saw that that Howard lives with me. Otherwise, he'd be sitting there right now, and they'd be questioning him, and he would be saying, "I don't understand the emoluments clause either. I'm a lobbyist." But he was approached by the Israeli ambassador, who he didn't know, who called him up randomly out of the blue and asked him if he would go meet the president. And there was no scheduled meeting for somebody who was, the president was seriously considering for his defense team. They did it pre-morning staff meeting and just shuffled him in as people were, oh, please. So he writes a letter advertising his opinion about obstruction of justice and the president, and then all of a sudden, he's nominated for attorney general. So here you have. This is fascinating. I think this is just absolutely fascinating. This is Sidney Blumenthal. Sidney Blumenthal. I'm sorry, I always get my Richard Blumenthal, Senator Richard Blumenthal from Connecticut. And, let me just keep it in order, okay? Lindsey Graham decided to use his, Lindsey Graham is now chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Frightening. But Lindsey Graham actually asked him about Strzok and Page Now, you know that this came up in conversations before the hearing about Strzok and Page. Turns out that Mr. Barr really doesn't know Lisa Page or Strzok. He doesn't know Peter Strzok. He doesn't know anybody. He doesn't know Bruce Orr. He doesn't know any of these people. He only knows what he read in the newspaper about their text messages, okay? And he really, kind of scanned it. So Lindsey Graham tries to open this as, now remember, I got to tell you this little fact, because this little fact is so key, so important. They're making the president keeps saying that the whole thing is a witch hunt because Andy McCabe, acting attorney general, saw enough, and it wasn't just behavior, obviously. He's got documents, he's got intercepts of phone calls that are freaking him the hell out. And then Comey is fired after asking, can you let Flynn go? Can you let Flynn go? Right? And that is when a counterintelligence investigation is opened, and it stays in the FBI for a matter of days. Just a few days into the FBI's counterintelligence investigation into the president of the United States, trying to answer the question, is the president acting on behalf of a foreign adversary as president of the United States? Rod Rosenstein is briefed, and he immediately goes and hires Bob Mueller and appoints a special counsel. I mean, it's a matter of days. So the FBI did not have much influence over where this investigation has gone. Just keep that in mind, because they keep blaming Strzok and Page. They didn't even have this case for more than like a minute and a half, okay? But Lindsey Graham, he's going to attack Strzok and Page as being the main culprits in this investigation, when the truth is that Rosenstein, as soon as he saw whatever McCabe had, he went out and hired Bob Mueller, picked a special counsel because he was so alarmed. All right, so here's Lindsey Graham doing his best.
2016, a text message. Trump's not ever going to become president, right? Right. Strzok responded, no, he's not. We'll stop him. Strzok was in charge of the Clinton email investigation. Ms. Page worked at the Department of Justice. August 15th, 2016. I want to believe the path you threw out for consideration in Andy's office, that there's no way he gets elected, but I'm afraid we can't take that risk. It's like an insurance policy in the unlikely event you die before 40. March 4th, 2016. Page to Strzok. God, Trump is a loathsome human being.
He is.
October the 20th, 2016. Trump is an effing idiot.
He is
unable to provide a coherent answer. To all those who enforce the law, you can have any opinion of us that you like.
Thank you.
But you're supposed to do your job without an agenda.
They did.
Do you promise me, as Attorney General, if you get this job, to look in to see what happened in 2016?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
How do these statements sit with you?
I was shocked when I saw them.
Okay. Please get to the bottom of it. I promise you we will protect the investigation, but we're relying upon you to clean this place up.
Oh, for Pete's sake. I mean, honestly, that investigation, the counterintelligence investigation, did not open in 2016, period. It did not. It was after the president was sworn in. It was after James Comey was fired in May of 2017. I mean, this is so mind-blowingly insulting to anybody that actually follows the timeline of this. That Friday New York Times article, the reason why that article mattered is because nobody knew that a counterintelligence investigation into the president being somebody who engaged in a conspiracy to defraud the United States during the election, that it was opened after James Comey was fired, and that the FBI only had that investigation for a matter of days before Rod Rosenstein appointed Bob Mueller to take that investigation and run with it. Took it away from the FBI. Now, Senator Blumenthal, much later in the day, asked Bill Barr about the fact that when the FBI opens a counterintelligence investigation, don't they have to go through multiple levels of review? And this one was the first of its kind. This is the first counterintelligence investigation into a sitting president of the United States of America. Don't you think that was a very high bar? And of course, he doesn't know.
When the FBI begins a counterintelligence investigation, if it is of the President of the United States for working with a foreign adversary,
oh my God,
that decision would be subject to multiple levels of review within the FBI, correct?
I assume. I don't know what rules were in effect at the time.
Well, in your experience,
yes,
there would be.
Yes.
And you have no reason to think that those rules have changed.
I don't know what the practice was.
This is painful.
And almost certainly in that kind of extraordinary investigation, you would agree with me, it would be extraordinary for the FBI to be investigating the president for working with a determined foreign adversary. There probably would be information shared with the Deputy Attorney General or the Attorney General. Agreed?
I would hope so. The reason I'm hesitating is because, some of these texts that we've all read are so weird and beyond my experience with the FBI. I don't know what was going on.
Well, these reports are stomach-churning in terms of the absolutely stunning and unprecedented kind of investigation that they reflect. You'd agree?
You mean the texts are stomach-turning?
No.
The reports of the investigation of the president.
I'm not sure what you're talking about when you say the reports of the investigation.
The New York Times on Friday.
The reports that the FBI opened an investigation of the president for working with a foreign adversary, Russia.
And what's stomach-churning about that? What is stomach-churning? The allegation against the president, or the fact
that an allegation would be made and be under investigation?
Oh, my God.
You see what I mean? Do you see what I mean? You have to know, what you're listening for and what you're watching and what you're hearing. This man, I tell you, he's so above his pay grade just sitting there. This is really wild. This is really crazy. The fact that there was a counterintelligence investigation opened on the sitting president of the United States, and his answer is, what's stomach churning about that? Oh my God. All right, then. Lindsey Graham started to attack Bruce Orr, whose wife, Nellie Orr, worked for Fusion GPS, and tried to make that into a point of conspiracy.
During the process of obtaining a warrant, is there a certification made by the Department of Justice to the court that the information being provided is reliable?
Yes, sir.
Are you familiar with Bruce Orr?
No, I'm not.
Bruce Orr was Associate Deputy Attorney General for Organized Crime and Drug Enforcement.
Right.
His wife worked at Fusion GPS. Are you familiar with Fusion GPS?
Yes, I've read about that.
Fusion GPS, Mr. Barr, was hired by the Democratic National Committee and the Clinton campaign to do opposition research against candidate Trump and maybe other candidates.
Yeah, Lindsay, you left out the first part, which is the Republicans first hired them. And then when you realized that Donald Trump was going to be the nominee, and a lot of opposition research was being done on him, that's when the Democrats said, we'll pay for the rest of it.
But we now know that they hired Fusion GPS, Michael Steele, who was a former British agent,
Christopher Steele,
to do opposition research and produce the famous dossier. Were you aware that Mr. Orr's wife worked for that organization?
I've read that.
Does that bother you if he had anything to do with the case?
Yes.
Are you aware that on numerous occasions he met with Mr. Steele while his wife work with Fusion GPS?
I've read that.
Okay. The warrant certification against Carter Page on 4 different occasions certifies that the dossier, which was the main source of the warrant, was reliable. Would you look in to see whether or not that was an accurate statement and hold people accountable if it was not?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mueller.
Okay, so let's just stop here. Okay, the FISA warrant on Carter Page was originally signed off on by, let's say, the Obama administration's team, and then it was renewed several times after Trump became president. They don't know. I mean, this guy really, poor William Barr, he doesn't really know anything.
You say you've known Mueller a long time. Would you say you have a close relationship with Mr. Mueller?
I would say we were good friends.
Would you say that you understand him to be a fair-minded person?
Absolutely.
Do you trust him to be fair to the president and the country as a whole?
Yes.
When his report comes to you, will you share it with us as much as possible?
Consistent with regulations and the law, yes.
Do you believe Mr. Mueller would be involved in a witch hunt against anybody?
I don't believe Mr. Mueller would be involved in a witch hunt.
Yeah, he's not going to attack Mueller. He's not going to attack somebody who he's known for years and years, who he knows has integrity, who he knows as a former Marine, who he knows is a very skilled criminal prosecutor on behalf of this president, because he doesn't need to, because he's going to get 51 votes, and he is going to be the Attorney General of the United States. That's number one. Number two, shortly after Lindsey Graham asks him about Bruce Orr and Strzok and Page, John Cornyn of Texas asks him, do you believe the FBI is politicized? And of course, this lobbyist from K Street, this of counsel to Kirkland and Ellis, this Verizon general counsel of, yesteryear, has no idea. And that's what he says.
Connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Here's how you fail the bar exam.
I'm not sure of all the facts. Well, I don't know. I'm not really sure what you're talking about. Okay. Not really sure. I'm not sure, but I have, I have no, I'm not sure. I don't know enough about it. I don't know what the facts are. I don't know what the facts are, but I don't know what the facts are. Well, I don't hold myself out as a foreign policy expert. I'm not an expert on this area. I don't know what rules were in effect at the time. I don't know what was going on. I don't know what the practice was. I don't know what was going on. I don't know. I have no idea. It's not an area that I've studied closely or become an expert in. I don't know. I don't know what. Oh!
I'm telling you, this is really, really, really just a pig in a poke is what it is. And it's sad because he's probably a nice guy, and he can count votes. This is what lobbyists do. They always know how many votes there are for their particular piece of legislation that they're shepherding through on behalf of their corporate client. And this guy knows he has the votes to become the Attorney General of the United States and that he can retire, after he gets all his, kids and his grandkids' jobs. That's what's going on here. This is really crazy. Now, the only question that we really care about, now that we know he's not, you could do a lot worse. We could have another Beauregard. I will say, he's got very strong opinions on immigration and that we need a wall. And he's got very strong opinions about Strzok and Page and Orr, who he doesn't know, right? He's got very strong opinions about those people because that's what the president and the interview for Attorney General produced that he knows he has to say on the TV, right? But is it? Do you think that he has these firmly held beliefs about any of this? I say no. I say we could do so much worse. We could have another racist. We could have Steve King, for God's sake. Could have a white nationalist. Could have a Jeff Beauregard Sessions. There's a lot of bad choices. A lot of really bad choices. But most people would not sully their reputation by working for Donald Trump any longer. This guy just wants to ride into that sunset and get his family, situated in government jobs. That's what it seems to me to be. So the only question I cared about was whether or not he would make public the Mueller report. Now, I will say at the beginning of the day, when Lindsey Graham just asked him, and you heard that part about, is Mueller, would he engage in a witch hunt? No, I don't believe he would. You know Bob Mueller very well. Yes, I do. Bob Mueller isn't, doing anything untoward. No, he's not. Whatever, right? It sounds okay. Then and then he said, will you do everything in your power to make the Mueller report public? He goes, everything under the rules and regulations. Whoa. Slow down, cowboy. You don't know the rules and regulations, but you're saying that you will, look at the rules and regulations, and yet you can give a guarantee that you will make this thing public. So Dianne Feinstein asks him also, will you commit to allowing the Mueller report to be made public?
Will you commit to no interference with the scope of the special counsel's investigation?
I will. The scope of the special counsel's investigation is set by his charter and by the regulations, and I will ensure that those are maintained.
Right.
Will you commit to providing Mr. Mueller with the resources, funds, and time needed to complete his investigation?
Yes.
All right.
Will you commit to ensuring that Special Counsel Mueller is not terminated without good cause, consistent with department regulations?
Absolutely.
If Special Counsel Mueller makes any request, for instance, about the scope of his investigation or resources for his investigation, will you commit to notifying Congress if you deny that request?
I think the regulations require notification of Congress if there's a disagreement.
Thank you. And I have two questions from the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. Will you commit to making any report Mueller produces at the conclusion of his investigation available to Congress and to the public?
As I said in my statement, I am going to make as much information available as I can, consistent with the rules and regulations that are part of the special counsel regulations.
Will you commit to making any report on the obstruction of justice public?
That's the same answer.
Thank you.
Well, you're not really done, Dianne. Let's turn to Senator Blumenthal of Connecticut, who, drills down on this question. And this is where the concern is. This is where I get concerned. Not just that this guy is way above his pay grade, being Attorney General of the United States after I don't know how he was Attorney General of the United States for, 14 months back in the early, 91. I don't know how that happened, but apparently he was chosen to pardon everybody in Iran-Contra from the Reagan administration, and HW brought him in to do those pardons. Now, that's a little scary because Walsh, who was the independent counsel in Iran-Contra, he had a 12-volume report that clearly showed that everything that we're suffering from now in the Northern Triangle, in Salvador, in Guatemala, in Nicaragua, it's all a result of what we did in those countries under Ronald Reagan, a secret illegal war that armed Contras against, left-wing. I mean, the whole thing is just, this is what we did. And we're still paying for it. But this guy was brought in to pardon all the people that were facing trial and all the people who had been convicted. And he did do it. That's what he did. So I'm interested in the drilling down of how he feels about this report becoming public. So Senator Blumenthal asks him some very, very deep questions, and you won't like the answers. I did not like the answers.
Will you commit to this committee that you will not allow the president or his attorneys to edit or change the special counsel report before it is submitted to Congress or the public?
I already said that I would not permit editing of my report.
My report.
Whatever report I or whoever is the Attorney General make.
Okay, this is important right here, all right? Because A, you get to see that he's assuming that he's, going to be the next attorney general, and why wouldn't he? He can count votes, and he knows that there's 53 Republicans, and they're all going to vote for him, so he's in. But then he takes it from Mueller's report and turns it into my report. As attorney general, I will write the report. Now, the question was asked because Rudy Giuliani has floated the suggestion that Donald Trump be allowed to edit the Mueller report, review it, edit it, and take stuff out of it that he doesn't like and put stuff in that he thinks exculpates him. And so the answer to the question, will you let the president edit the report, is no. But then he downshifts into, it will not be Mueller. No, leave it up. It will not be Mueller's report. It will be my report. And check this part out. This is awful.
And will you commit that you will come to Congress and explain any deletions or changes that are made to that report before it is issued?
Okay, so, there are different reports at work here. Which report are you? There are two different
about
reports.
The special counsel report.
Okay, well, under the current regulations, the special counsel report is confidential. And
But
the report
will you
the report that goes public would be a report by the Attorney General.
Will you commit that you will explain to us any changes or deletions that you make to the special counsel report that's submitted to you in whatever you present to us?
I will commit to providing as much information as I can consistent with the regulations. Are you saying, for example, that if information is deleted, that would be like for classification purposes, I would identify that and things like that?
Yeah.
Well, that you will commit to explaining to us what the reasons are.
Right.
For your deleting any information that the special counsel includes that you are preventing us or the public from seeing.
That would be my intent. I have to say that the rules, I don't know what kind of report is being prepared. I have no idea. And I have no idea what Acting Attorney General Rosenstein has discussed with Special Counsel Mueller. If I'm confirmed, I'm going to go in and see what's being contemplated and what they've agreed to and what their interpretation, what game plan they have in mind.
Will you permit
But my purpose is to get as much accurate information out as I can consistent with the regulations.
Well, the regulations and rules give you extraordinarily broad discretion.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping, and I'm asking you to commit, that you will explain to us information that you have taken out of that special counsel report.
So now we understand that the next Attorney General of the United States will be William Barr, and William Barr knows nothing about nothing. He's a lobbyist, probably a very, very good one, for his corporate clients who happen to be looking to merge and acquire other telecommunications companies, whether it's wireless or it's internet or it's radio or television stations. Time Warner, for instance, perhaps he sees this as a way to get into the Attorney General's position, to shepherd through on behalf of one of his huge clients that he just said he took on, who expects a lot of work for their money, that he could get a merger, let's say, Time Warner or something of this nature, because he testified today he doesn't know why the president was against the Time Warner merger. He didn't understand why he was against that. So maybe he sees this as a way to spend his time doing that. And as a quid pro quo, when the Mueller report comes out, he'll rewrite it. And he won't tell Congress the exact reason why he deleted whatever he's going to delete. That's what Blumenthal was asking. So if you take something out because, let's say, it exposes sources and methods of collection of cyber, data on Russia, let's say, will you commit to coming to Congress and saying the reason why that section is redacted is because it has to do with national security, it has to do with sources and methods? Will you commit to doing that? And he goes, no, you're going to write the report. Yes, I'm going to write the report. And I'm going to go in there and see what the hell the agreement is between Rosenstein and Mueller. And I'm going to figure out what their game plan is. Meanwhile, he was very busy today saying all the things he doesn't know anything about. He doesn't know any foreign policy. And that's interesting because the FBI, a lot of people don't realize, the Justice Department and the FBI are our first counterintelligence agents on the scene overseas as well, for acts of terrorism. And he says, I don't know anything about foreign policy. I've never studied foreign policy. I'm not an expert in foreign policy. Ben Sass was asking him about that. And he couldn't answer that question either. So, like I said, this is what we're going to get. This is the bottom of the barrel when it comes to enforcers of law. This guy is a lobbyist. His area, obviously, is telecommunications. The Israeli ambassador was, calling around town looking for somebody to take the job to help Donald Trump build a defense team. Couldn't find anybody. They got to a list. They saw this guy, and they saw that he has a credit, that he was Attorney General for 14 months in 1991. Oh, let's call him. So have you ever said anything bad about the president in public? No. Have you ever, written anything bad about the president, that was published? No. All right, well, why don't you come meet the president? All right, I'll go meet the president. And then he tells the president, I'm really not a litigator. I don't want to have, an individual as a client. I represent corporate interests, on behalf of, my law firm or my lobby shop is what I do. And, I parlay that into becoming general counsel of the companies I lobby on behalf of, once I get the mergers approved. So, and it does seem to me that he is going to redact and he is going to write whatever report Congress gets or we get if we're lucky enough to get anything. So there's my beef with him. Is it a partisan beef? No, it isn't. It's a lobbyist that wants to be the chief law enforcement officer, which is such a terrible, terrible pick. That is a bad fit.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe it. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
Ready for this?
Okay. And as you know, you were on the board of Time Warner at the time, and you signed a sworn affidavit questioning whether the Justice Department's decision to block the merger was politically motivated, given, and this is from the affidavit, the president's prior public animus towards the merger. Are you talking here about his view on CNN? What did you mean by prior public animus?
I'm sorry, could you? Could you repeat that?
Sure.
Yeah,
You were on the board of Time Warner, and you
Right.
signed a sworn affidavit questioning whether the Justice Department's decision to block the merger was politically motivated, given the president's prior public animus toward the merger. And so what did you mean by that?
I mean, the affidavit speaks for itself in that at that meeting, I was concerned that the antitrust division was not engaging with some of our arguments, and I got concerned that they weren't taking the merits as seriously as I would hope they would. But I have, I have no. I'm not sure why they acted the way they did.
Okay.
So he was lobbying for the Time Warner merger, right? It's just so obvious, like, what this man does for a living. And it isn't prosecutions, and it isn't law enforcement, and it isn't foreign policy, and it isn't counterterrorism, and it isn't cybersecurity, and it isn't indicting a president, and it isn't writing, the Mueller report. This man is a lobbyist for telecommunications companies. That is what he is, and he's retired, and he's a consultant, and he's also of counsel. He's not a partner at Kirkland and Ellis. He's not he is of counsel, meaning they keep him on the, stationary. He's a lobbyist, and he's a telecommunications lobbyist. And that is what, if you Google him and you go to Kirkland and Ellis's own website, okay, and you see what his, curriculum vitae is, or you see what his bio says, that's what you'll see, that we're down to hiring a freaking lobbyist, a telecommunications lobbyist, as the Attorney General of the United States of America, a retired lobbyist. I can't even tell. I mean, this would be like, if they literally went out and, hired half the people that I used to know when I was living in D.C., it would be amazing to me that person would be sitting in that seat being questioned as if he's a real attorney. They're lobbyists. As if he's a real law enforcement guy. I mean, it's just so crazy. And you know what? America is so undereducated about the different kinds of law practices that there are. They think everybody is a litigator. Everyone goes to court. Everybody has, experience. There are certain kinds of people that go to court. And then there are certain kinds of court attorneys. There are certain kinds of litigators. There's criminal, there's defense, there's prosecution, there's a civil, there's a criminal. I mean, there's all kinds. And he is not in any of those wheelhouses. Okay, that is not what his area of expertise is. And we're considering him to be Attorney General of the United States because the president feels like he might be able to suppress the Mueller report, take some powers that are given to him by sitting in that office to rewrite the Mueller report and to block out things that the president doesn't want seen by the public. But as I said, it could be a lot worse. It could. We could have another racist, which I don't believe this guy is. It's just... It's mind-blowing, though, that's how low on the totem pole we are now. That is how low. Meanwhile, the president, as you know, is all over the TV in the midst of this shutdown, not wanting to answer any questions about the shutdown except to blame the Democrats over and over again, which, by the way, is being rejected by the American people. 75% of us do not want the stupid wall, which is amazing. And a great majority of people, like in the 60% range, blame Donald Trump for this. And so you just got to sit here and hope and pray that Mitch McConnell gets that half of the people that are sitting here today are on the ballot, or a third of the people that are in Congress and the Senate today are on the ballot in 2020, and that they are starting to get freaked out by this president's shutdown, and that Mitch McConnell could be, talked into putting a bill on the floor that had previously passed 3 weeks ago with 96 votes, which last I checked is a veto-proof majority to open this government. The only thing standing between opening this government and not opening this government is Mitch McConnell. It's not even, Trump. And it ain't even Cult 45. It ain't even, because they're freaked out. The farmers are freaked out. Listen, this man, this Donald Trump, with his trade war, literally killed the American soybean market, which is what most farmers grow. And now, since the agriculture department is shut down, they can't even get the reports about the pricing of commodities for next year, so they don't even know what to plant. Now, the corporate farmers, they're not in such bad shape. They could probably ride this out for a year or so. But the family farmers, they can't. They need loans every year. Why? because they have to pay the rent on their farms, because they have to buy the seed for their farms, because they have to buy the fertilizer for their farms, and they have to pay themselves while they're farming. But they don't even know what to plant because of this dude, this president, and this stupid trade war of his. Now, I got to tell you, he's losing across the board, okay? He's losing on the China trade deal. He has destroyed the soybean market. He's destroying, farmers. He's destroying everything. It's so unbelievable that he's doing all this. And he's doing all this to distract everybody from the fact that there is a counterintelligence investigation that was, for the very first time in the history of this country, opened on a sitting president after he fired the director of the FBI and told Lester Holt that he was doing it because of this Russia thing. So, I mean, here's a brief business report about, the trade war.
We're doing very well with China. They're having a hard time with their economy because of the tariffs. I think that we are going to be able to do a deal with China. I can tell you, we are getting things that before I became president, you would have had no chance of getting.
I'd love to know what those things are.
Me too.
Interested. That, of course, was President Trump this morning right outside the White House. But despite his claim, quote, that we are doing well with China.
I don't know what that means, because the evidence doesn't point to that.
Who knows? Maybe those meetings were great, but we're going to give you some data. Newly released figures show that China's trade surplus with the U.S. surged to a record high in 2018.
So that's the extra amount that China, that's what Donald Trump said the whole problem was, and that's gotten worse.
He said he would be erasing it on his watch.
Now, we have to take this all with a pinch of salt because these are numbers released by the Chinese government. Over time, we get similar numbers from the U.S. government, and over time, we can tell if they match. But the Chinese government showed that its trade surplus with the United States jumped 17% to more than $323 billion in 2018. China says its exports to the United States, look at this, rose more than 11%. At the same time, its imports from the United States inched up just 0.7%.
Damn.
All of this amid President Trump's trade war.
Give me a break.
So the trade imbalance between us and China favors China by, big time, right? They are importing even more crap into our economy. Their imports into us are up by over 10%, 11%. And our exports to them, 0.7% increase. So he's lying about that. The other thing that he's losing on is big, beautiful coal. Remember the coal miners? You're going to see coal miners. We're going to go out there. We're going to do coal. Coal is a tremendous form of energy. Coal.
We have clean coal exports have increased 60% last year. Clean coal, which is one of our big assets that we weren't allowed to use for our miners. You remember Hillary with the coal, right? Sitting with the miners at the table. Remember, that wasn't so good for her.
Yeah, because she told the truth.
So the people of West Virginia and all over. You look at Wyoming, you look at so many different places where they just, Pennsylvania, where they loved what we did. And it's clean coal, and we have the most modern procedures. But it's a tremendous form of energy in the sense that in a military way, think of it, coal is indestructible. You can blow up a pipeline. You can blow up the windmills, the windmills. Boom, boom, boom.
Bing, bong,
Bing,
boom.
That's the end of that windmill. If the birds don't kill it first. The birds can kill it first. They kill so many birds. You look underneath some of those windmills, it's like a killing field of birds. But, that's what they were going to. They were going to windmills. And, don't worry about when the wind doesn't blow. So what happens when the wind doesn't blow? Well, then we have a problem. Okay, good. They were putting them in areas where they didn't have much wind, too. And it's a subsidy. You need subsidy for windmills. You need subsidy. Who wants to have energy where you need subsidy?
Reuters today. More U.S. coal-fired power plants were shut down in President Donald Trump's first 2 years than were retired in the whole of Barack Obama's first term. Good for you, Trump. You managed to get rid of dirty coal. He's done everything he could. He rolled back rules on climate change. He rolled back rules on the environment that were adopted during the Obama administration. But the number of U.S. coal plants has declined every single year after its peak in 2011. So let's read this Reuters statement one more time. More U.S. coal-fired power plants were shut in President Donald Trump's first 2 years than were retired in the whole of Barack Obama's first term. Guess why? Natural gas. Guess why? Renewables, solar and wind. They have kept electric prices relatively low for years, making it absolutely a bad bargain for generators to keep investing in older coal and nuclear plants. However, greenhouse gas has spiked in 2018. It had fallen in the past 3 years, and now it's spiking because he has reversed all kinds of carbon emission standards. Now, he did, he tried to slow the retirement of coal through a directive that he issued in 2017 from Rick Perry. And he, it's so funny. You go, why do you want energy that needs to be subsidized? Well, he ordered Rick Perry to subsidize the aging units, the aging coal plants. And then the advocates, the lobbyists for gas and renewables and consumers unanimously rejected by the U.S. Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, led by former Chairman Kevin McIntyre, killed it. So what we have is higher emissions and lower coal plant, lower megawatt production by coal plants. They're just retiring them one after the other after the other. So when are the maggots? When are the cult 45ers? When are they going to realize that this man is a con man? When are they going to understand that they've been bamboozled? They've been sold a bill of goods. When are they going to realize? I tweeted that out last night as a question, and the answer from most of you was never. I don't know. I'm seeing some farmers get a little bit exasperated by him. He went to the farmers yesterday. These were the corporate farmers, though, in New Orleans. And, the corporate farmers are cool with him. But the rest of the farmers, the family farms, they are not cool with him anymore. They are not good with this.
Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
When we have proper security, people aren't going to come. Except for the people we want to come, because we want to take people in to help our farmers, etc. Very important. We're going to make that actually easier for them to help the farmers, because you need these people.
How are you going to make it easier?
No, you need these people. We're going to make it easier.
We need slaves.
I'm glad I told you that, because, look, you're in that business, and a lot of people don't understand this. You need people to help you with the farms. And I'm not going to rule that out. I'm going to make that easier for them to come in and to work the farms. You've had some people for 20, 25 years. They're incredible. Then they go home and they can't get back in. That's not going to happen.
And they can't get
back in. But we're keeping
in.
the wrong ones out, okay? We don't want the wrong ones coming into our country. And for that, it's going to be almost impossible to get in. For the people that work the farms, that have been here, that have gone through this very short but good process, that are going to help our country, it's going to be easier for them to get in than what they have to go through now. So just
give me a break.
That.
Oh my God! It's telling farmers, we'll get you some slaves. Don't worry, we'll pick up some slaves for you. And this is just, and it's all a distraction. It's a distraction because the president is literally under investigation for various things. Obviously, some of them have to do with fraud. Other things have to do with the emoluments clause, enriching himself by using his position as president to benefit him, not the country. And then there's the question of a counterintelligence investigation about whether or not the president conspired with a foreign adversary in order to rig a presidential election. Now, you know that, proprietary information, polling data was given to the Russians by Paul Manafort. Mueller just dropped another filing about why Paul Manafort breached his plea agreement, why Paul Manafort, should not be given any of the leniency that he sought because he lied to Mueller and witness tampered and, was not forthcoming even though he had a shot. At the same time, you have our Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin, trying to lessen sanctions on the guy that Paul Manafort gave the proprietary internal polling information to, Oleg Deripaska from Rusal, the aluminum oligarch in Russia. That is who Paul Manafort gave the proprietary internal polling data to try and make himself whole because Deripaska was suing him in a Cayman Islands court. And Manafort was $19 million in debt to these people. Now, why would Mnuchin try to lessen sanctions on the guy who was the beneficiary of Manafort's crimes? I got a funny feeling it's because Manafort thinks they could kill me just as easily in here. You better give Deripaska what he wants or I'm a dead man. I swear this is such mob stuff. Oh, and speaking of mob stuff, the president was on with Jeanine Pirro. This was an off-the-hook interview. I'm not even going to bother playing for you like most of it. But this was the thing that jumped out at almost everybody, that the president is still intimidating witnesses, which is probably going to be somewhere in Mueller's, writings. That the president continues to intimidate witnesses just the same as Manafort continued to, witness tamper, suborn perjury from Michael Cohen, things like that. Because when Trump was on with, Jeanine Pirro, who I keep telling you, I don't understand why these people wear cocktail dresses on the TV, at 8 o'clock in the morning and at 8 o'clock at night. But he was on with her and he threatened Michael Cohen's wife's father, his father-in-law. He literally threatened him on the TV. Now, this is right out of The Godfather, okay? All these people that write, about the mob, they miss the whole Rosetta Stone of mob stuff, okay? I mean, if you wanted an MBA in Italian mafia and what Trump thinks and why he thinks it and how he learned this, then you have to watch Godfather 1 and 2, okay? You just have to. And there's a scene where Frank Pantangeli has entered into a plea agreement with the government. He's one of the capos of the 5 families that Michael Corleone is in charge of as Godfather. And Frank Pantangeli is being held in an army base pending his testimony to Congress, where he will be able to implicate Michael Corleone in many, many murders. Okay? Many murders. And as Pantangeli gets ready to testify, the Army brings him from the base and they, bring him to Congress. He's sworn in. And all of a sudden they ask him questions about, whether or not Michael Corleone ever ordered a murder or Michael Corleone. And he goes, he looks to his right and he sees his brother who lives in Sicily and speaks no English sitting in the gallery of Congress all of a sudden. And he realizes that Michael Corleone has flown his brother from Sicily to Congress to sit in the gallery so that he could send a message to Frank Pantangeli that it's better for him to open up his wrists and bleed out and die and have his family taken care of by Michael Corleone than it would be for him to turn state's evidence against Michael Corleone, because then he'll kill his brother too. And his family will be left destitute. That is what Donald Trump did on Jeanine Pirro's show.
And now, of course, little Adam Schiff, as you call him, is going to be dragging in, and Jerry Nadler are going to be dragging in Michael Cohen, an already proven liar to Congress, convicted of it. You know, are you worried that he's going to...
I was a client of his, and, you know, you're supposed to have lawyer-client privilege, but it doesn't matter because I'm a very honest person, frankly. But he's in trouble on some loans and fraud and taxi cabs and stuff that I know nothing about. And in order to get a sentence reduced, he says, I have an idea. I'll give you some information on the president. Well, there is no information, but he should give information maybe on his father-in-law, because that's the one that people want to look at. Because where does that money? That's the money in the family. And I guess he didn't want to talk about his father-in-law. He's trying to get his sentence reduced. So it's pretty sad. You know, it's weak, and it's very sad to watch a thing like that. I couldn't care less.
What is his father-in-law's name?
I don't know, but you'll find out and you'll look into it, because nobody knows what's going on over there. Again, I was a client.
That is disgusting. That is witness intimidation, plain and simple, on the TV. I mean, that is just amazing. So what's his father-in-law's name? I don't know. But he's accusing his father-in-law of crimes, and he's intimidating Michael Cohen into believing that Donald Trump will use the awesome power of the Justice Department to prosecute his father-in-law if Michael Cohen testifies in front of Congress. And Michael Cohen will testify in front of Congress on February 7th, and that is going to be a blockbuster. Everybody's going to watch it. It'll be like the day Oliver North testified, if you don't remember that, in Iran-Contra. I mean, everybody's going to watch it. If you only remember the 90s, then think about the day Anita Hill testified. And if you don't remember that, then you've been a sweet little country mouse living in a perfect little world with only the impeachment of Bill Clinton to, give you any background on the Republican, scuzziness. That was sick. That was twisted. That was intimidation of a witness. That is, right out of the freaking Godfather. That is Frankie Pantangeli. And then when Frankie looks and he sees his brother and they start asking him questions, he goes, yeah, sure. I said Michael Corleone did this and Michael Corleone did that because they were offering me a deal, Senator. They were offering me a deal. So I said, yeah, sure. That's what Donald Trump is doing. And this shutdown is a distraction, but it's an expensive distraction. It's putting our national security at risk. I mean, you got TSA guys not there. You got the FAA. You got the air traffic controllers that are, working overtime and not getting paid. Bless you. You have the Pilots Association writing letters to the president saying that he is, jeopardizing the airspace and he's jeopardizing the movement of airplanes and something's going to happen. I mean, you got the Coast Guard that's, furloughed, and the Coast Guard interdicts the drugs he says he's so concerned about. And he keeps on losing. You know what else he lost today? Today he lost in court. A federal judge in New York, not the Ninth Circuit out west, but a federal judge in New York on Monday ruled that the Trump administration cannot include a citizenship question on the 2020 census form because they believe that it would chill people who are here without documents from participating in the census. And the demographers were able to show that it would undercount the citizens and it would skew the distribution of federal funds, meaning that blue states would get hurt worse. Blue states where there's much more a homogenous, diverse population. Would be cheated out of federal funds because people would not want to participate in the census, and that it would reduce the political power of blue states. So this was something Wilbur Ross, the Commerce Secretary, proposed doing, putting a citizenship question on the census. And Wilbur Ross, as you know, the former vice chair of the Bank of Cyprus, the biggest money laundering bank since Deutsche Bank. He tried to, and they said, no, that violates law. The law requires that federal agencies thoroughly study an issue before they implement or change policy, and you did not do that. It's the same thing with the environmental impact studies that haven't been done on his stupid wall. It's the same thing with eminent domain for the stupid wall. I mean, they haven't done, there's no plan. He keeps saying, oh, we just submitted a design. He didn't submit a design. He keeps saying the coal miners are going back to work. Meanwhile, I'm telling you that more coal plants have been taken offline in his first 2 years than under Barack Obama. You know, he just keeps lying. He just keeps lying. He's telling farmers, oh, well, we'll pick out the good ones and we'll send slaves to your farm. You know, we'll make it easier for that. He doesn't say how. He keeps saying he's, negotiating with China, and it's going really good, and nobody knows what he's talking about. Meanwhile, imports from China are through the roof. Our exports to China went up 0.7%, and the trade imbalance between us and China has increased exponentially. I mean, he's destroying this country. There is just no question about it, all to protect himself. It's bizarre. He's got a warped foreign policy. He keeps on threatening to pull us out of NATO. That's again happening. Bizarre. Judy in California.
Hi, Randy.
Hey, Judy.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
You know, I just got to tell you, I don't know how you do all you do and look so good doing it, Randy. You're just amazing.
Yeah.
You really are.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm 8 weeks ahead of anybody else who follows other media because I listen to you.
Well, thank you. And you are.
Yeah. No, you remind me of the working girl that prostitutes trash and the daughter and
Sin. You'll never guess where I am.
Yeah, you remind me of her.
Oh.
I wanted to bring up. Do you think that could he indict the president and circumvent this new waffly AG?
Well, you know, all we have is an opinion from the Office of Legal Counsel, and we don't have any case law on it because we've never felt the need to indict a president for crime. Do you know? I mean, we have had presidents who were impeached but not removed. We've never removed a president, and we've not ever seen a president be indicted. So we don't know if the well, there's nothing in the Constitution that says you can't indict a president. What there is in the Constitution is a method for removing the president. And so the OLC, this office, created an opinion that says that there's only one way, and the way is impeachment now and removal. But we don't know because it's never been tested. Now, here's another question. What if Mueller, I believe Mueller's going to have to indict now because without the indictment, even if the indictment is ruled out of bounds, okay, even if they say, oh, I'm sorry, but, we can't indict a sitting president after the fact. If he indicts the president, we would get the indictment. The indictment would be public, and we would see the reason. We would see the case. We would see the law that he broke, laws, plural, that he broke, and, it would be all laid out in the indictment, even if it was ruled unconstitutional somehow later on. That's number one. So I would love to see Mueller indict him. But if Mueller believes that the OLC and the Department of Justice's opinion that's never been tested carries the day, as they say, what's to stop the grand jury from indicting him?
Oh, this is why you are who you are, Randy.
Yeah, it is.
Honestly, it really is. I was just thinking that maybe, I don't think Rod Rosenstein and Robert Mueller have gone this whole way to drop the ball at the,
I know, I don't either.
On the 1 yard line.
I don't either, but I got a funny feeling that this particular attorney general is just a guy who doesn't care very much about anything except mergers and acquisitions and getting his family hired, you know what I mean, into various prosecutors' offices so they could start their legal careers. Honestly, I don't think he cares. Most lobbyists don't.
And I wouldn't have known that if I didn't listen to you today.
I know, because nobody's going to explain that to you about, who he is and what a lobbyist is all about, because they don't know. And if they do know, they never tell you. But I know so many lobbyists that it's kind of an epidemic among them. They don't care about anything.
It's the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Putin, from everything I see, has no respect for this person.
Well, that's because he'd rather have a puppet as president of the United States.
No puppet.
And it's pretty clear.
You're the puppet.
What Donald Trump is saying is that he would unilaterally surrender to Russia and Putin, give Putin a massive foreign policy victory.
This guy's already doing enormous damage to us around the world. This is a race between a man who praises Vladimir Putin, pursues Putin,
and he thinks Putin's a good guy. So I just can't go there.
And Donald Trump has got all these weird connections with Russia.
Donald Trump says he admires Vladimir Putin. At the same time, he's called George W. Bush a liar. That is a twisted example of evil trumping good.
I do think that a Trump victory is a gift to Vladimir Putin. It's like they're on the same page.
And now you have Vladimir Putin basically pulling out the old KGB playbook on how to manipulate Donald Trump, and it appears he's fallen right into it.
Mr. Trump's continued flattery of Mr. Putin and the degree to which he appears to model many of his policies and approaches to politics on Mr. Putin is unprecedented in American politics.
So in love with you.
You kind of miss when it was only the racism. Now it's, espionage, and now it's conspiracy, and now it's defrauding, and, lying every single day, witness intimidation. This is the former head of the Department of Justice Counterintelligence Agency, okay? This is just so freaking frightening. This is David Loffman, all right?
Do you mean in blunt terms that the continuing existence of this presidency is a threat to the national security of the United States? Do you think the president is that kind of a threat?
I think there's a culmination of things we can point to in the public record now. The unbelievable acquiescence to Vladimir Putin in Helsinki that was positively shocking to those of us who've worked in national security all of our lives. All the many things that you've read about in the charging documents of people associated with the president, all those to me point to a reasonable inference that, and it's a painful, anguishing thing to acknowledge, that the President of the United States is a clear and present danger to the national security of the United States. And that is why, in my own small way, and I'm just one voice among many, I felt the need to issue a kind of small cry or call to action in the tweet that I issued last night, hoping that it will impel members of Congress on both sides of the aisle, members of this administration, and American citizens in their own communities who can mobilize and express their views to bring about additional accountability for this administration in matters that are detrimental to our country's interests.
Here's Representative Denny Heck.
Mueller wants this face-to-face, right? They submitted written answers. Here we are at nearing the end, and Mueller wants more, and he wants a sit-down. That obviously could be very significant. Should Mueller go ahead with the subpoena of the president?
Well, I don't believe, Aaron, frankly, that the president or Rudy Giuliani, acting as an attorney, ever intended whatsoever for the president to actually sit down with a face-to-face with Director Mueller. But, the fact that he will not do it begs the same question that so many other of his behaviors beg. Why did he ask for the translator's note? Why did he defend Putin last year at Helsinki? Why does he refuse to sit down? And the answer is increasingly, inescapably, because he's hiding something.
Now, on that front, you have the president now denying he's a Russian agent. Last time we spoke, you said the writing's on the wall. The walls are closing in. This is the beginning of the end for the Trump administration. That was when you and I spoke just a few weeks ago. What do you say tonight?
I was right. Listen, I am beginning to feel as though I am on the set of The Manchurian Candidate.
Really?
This is beyond bizarre now. And I guess my question for all of those who continue to support the president is, what lie will it take in order for you to open up your mind to the fact that there might be something highly nefarious going on here after all the evidence, after the 16 operatives of the Trump campaign reached out to Russian operatives, after all the indictments, after all the criminal convictions? What will it take for people to understand this is not good for America? This is not good for America's future whatsoever.
Okay, so there's that, and here's Senator Mazie Hirono.
The Armed Services Committee, where the president over the last year has been telling advisors he wants to withdraw from NATO. Do you believe that he would go through with that?
He's made it pretty plain that he's not too happy with NATO. And when you piece together all of the different statements he's made and you know, where we ask, well, why is he doing this? And then this is why it is so not normal to have to ask, well, whose side is the president on? A Russia's side or our side? It is the accumulation of these, what seems like unusual, head-scratching, disparate kinds of utterances from him. But when you start to see a pattern where he basically spouts Putin's lies, then we have to ask the most unusual and frightening question about our own president.
It is unusual. That's the thing. It's a very unusual and frightening question that we have to ask ourselves. And that is the president an asset? Is he under the influence or blackmail or otherwise predisposed to giving Vladimir Putin his wet dream, and that is to pull us out of an alliance that has kept us safe from Russia for 70 years? Did he lay supine in front of Vladimir Putin in Helsinki? Did he take a translator's notes in Hamburg and remove them from her possession and order her not to tell anybody, give anybody a readout of that meeting that they had there in Germany and then again in Helsinki for over 2 hours? Why doesn't the DNI Dan Coates know what was discussed in Helsinki? Why doesn't the Secretary of State know what was discussed in Helsinki? Why doesn't the CIA know what was discussed in a 2-hour meeting with Vladimir Putin and the president? Why doesn't our national security apparatus? Why should Russia know more about what was discussed in a meeting with our president than our intelligence agencies know? Why is he consistently trying to withdraw us from NATO, which plays right into Putin's hands? This is like the big get that Putin wants. Why is he threatening witnesses' father-in-laws? Seriously, why is he doing that?
He should give information maybe on his father-in-law, because that's the one that people want to look at. And I guess he didn't want to talk about his father-in-law. He's trying to get his sentence reduced.
And when she said, what is your father-in-law's name? I don't know, but you should look into it. Just feeding like, misinformation, disinformation, not only to the viewers, but to, this is disgusting that she has this in front of her name, Judge Jeanine Pirro's crazy-ass conspiracy mind. I mean, this is just so sad. How many people are going to warn you? Listen, Ted Cruz was warning you. Lindsey Graham was warning you. He called President Trump a kook, said he was crazy, and that this worship of Putin was really twisted and sick. Apparently, these people are all compromised as well in some way, shape, or form. Now, we know the NRA is compromised. We know that $30 million was laundered through the NRA from Russia to the U.S. into campaigns of Republicans. And that's probably just the tip of the iceberg. Scott in New York.
Yes, ma'am. Randy, wow, I can't believe I'm speaking to you. We go way back. Please don't tell the Howard. But, probably maybe 83, 82. Born and raised in New York City. Service-connected veteran, airborne paratrooper. I just wanted to say that, unfortunately, I think that Ms. Pelosi is not going to do anything. She, just like with George Bush, she said it's off, impeachment's off the table. She's not going to do anything. She's going to wait and then wait and then wait, because she's already said that we're going to wait for we're going to wait for Mr. Mueller. We're going to wait for Mr. Mueller. We're going to wait.
Right.
They're going to take their time and they're going to string it out. Once the election starts, then it's okay. Well, you can't have it during the election, and so that's going to be the fallback. But that's one unfortunate thing. But if they were to look into one thing that Donnie Putin, a.k.a. Donnie No Legs, that's what we call them in Harlem. If you look at one thing that he said, Russia, if you are listening, Russia.
Right.
Once he said that, as a military veteran, you know as well as I know, that is called treason, because he is openly asking a country to invade us. That's treason. So at that point, Ms. Pelosi doesn't have to wait. I'm sorry, First Lord. Ms. Pelosi doesn't have to wait. All she has to do is take that quote, and then if you take the last quote from Helsinki, when that reporter asked Donnie Putin, Vladimir Putin, when he asked him, okay, did you interfere with the American election, and did you get somebody to help?
He said yes, I did.
Yes, ma'am. If you please put both of those together and play those every day, ma'am, I make a couple bucks, but I'm certainly going to send you a few shekels. I got no problems with that.
Well, thank you so much. Did I ever sleep with you?
Not yet, but I said, don't tell the Howard I'm 53. I'm single, so I'm still available. You see what I'm saying?
I hear you. I'll put you on the back burner in case anything ever goes south. You know what I mean?
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Absolutely, you're beautiful, Miss Rose. You are beautiful.
Thanks
Thank
so
you, ma'am.
much. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Bye
Yes,
bye.
ma'am.
Well, the thing about waiting for the Mueller report is it's more ammunition. Now, if we do get into this arena that Scott is alleging that now it's election season and we can't begin impeachment, Nancy Pelosi not only will lose the speakership, but she will not be sent back to Congress. I mean, not if the Mueller report is so devastating. I get that, we all recognized when he said, Russia, if you're listening, I get that. I get that everybody understood what he was inviting them to do, but you got to prove it. You got to prove that he was inviting cyber war. And then you would have some sort of espionage, or defrauding of the United. I don't think you could charge treason unless somebody in Congress declared us to be at war, cyber war, whatever, with Russia, because treason is, only during wartime. So I know it's parsing, I get it, but that's what the law is. That's what the GD law. John in California.
Hey, Randy.
Hi.
How you doing?
Hi.
I love you. You are something else.
Thanks.
Oh, welcome to the United States of the oligarchs.
Yes.
I mean, literally, we have a problem with the oligarchs. This thing is actually bigger than Russia, and I'll tell you how. Because you keep saying the main words right in front of your face. This is the mob.
Yeah.
The biggest mob in the world is the Billionaire Boys Club.
Yeah, it is.
It always has been.
Yeah.
Ever since Ronald Reagan.
Oh, no.
This has been a 40-year plan.
It is. It totally is. It is a plan. It has been a plan. That's why tax cuts for the wealthy. That's why, trickle down has been, sold to the American people as being effective, and it's not. You still have. This is a crazy number. It's a crazy, crazy number. But 50% of the people in the United States make less than $50,000 a year. How is that?
Oh, my God.
I know.
Not in the richest country in the world. That shouldn't even be possible.
Right.
And here's the thing that kills me. The trickle-down theory. I mean, at 7 years old, when I heard of it, at 7 years old, I was like, well, he's saying let us eat poop. So I don't even understand why everybody fell for that. But then here's the thing. I'm here in California. You know what's going on here, right?
Yeah, the school teacher strike.
I mean, and there's a bunch of them, too. But then when you think about the average salary for a school teacher, it's like $32,000.
Not in California.
Yeah.
No, 75.
No, that's where ones that's been on the job for 10 years of that.
Well, yeah.
I know. I got a friend.
But
I got a friend that was she started at 28. My friend.
That's pathetic. But in LA where they're striking, I think entry is 52. But you got to realize that it could be more. It's just the health care costs. But they're
it's not even the healthcare costs.
It is. It's the healthcare costs that are driving down their salaries, and also the class sizes there.
I was about to say that because
oh my
I got
God,
another friend.
I got to go. We're up against the top of the hour, and we're done. But they have like 40 kids in a class in California. They don't have any guidance counselors in California. You have like one school nurse for like 2,000 kids. That's why they're on strike. It's not just about their salary. It isn't. And more power to them. And you know what? Oklahoma had a teacher strike. West Virginia had a teacher strike. North Carolina had a teacher strike. This is sick. This is twisted because we're only as good as the kids are. I mean, who's going to take care of me? Howard? Huh? Seriously, they are the future. There's no question about it. Go for it, teachers. Go for it. Get it. Get it. Buy a stinking podcast.